Welcome to Green Box Gaming. We are here today. We just want to do a quick intro for anyone who's new to listening. I'll start out. My name is Joe. I am the GM or the handler for our game, and just want to introduce the rest of us here. Brad, say
Hello.
hi.
I am the player in Delta
Yes,
Green.
This is Brad. He's one of our players, and then Gian.
Hello. I too
Yes.
am a player.
Yes, and
Yes.
lastly, Dace.
Hi, Dace.
So we are here just to do a quick intro and thank you for joining us for our Delta Green Impossible Landscapes playthrough. We're pretty new to the tabletop RPG actual play kind of scene, and as such, quick disclaimer here, our audio quality starts off a little bit hit or miss, just because we're kind of new to it, but we're kind of getting some new equipment now that kind of helps us sound a little better, a little clearer. And there are some network issues early on in some of the episodes, but I guarantee you that it does get better, and the story is more than worth it. So, that being said, here real quick, for those who've never heard of Delta Green, who don't know what Delta Green is, I figured we just kind of talk about that real quick. And those of you who are familiar with Delta Green and are not interested in what we think about it, go ahead and skip to the next episode and get into the character creation and, the first little bits of gameplay that we have in episode 1. So,
Or just skip the podcast. If this is not where you need to be, you just move
Just
on.
skip it.
Carry
We're
on.
not that important.
Thanks for
No.
coming. Nice
Yeah,
to see you.
it's been fun, and we
You
really
could be
appreciate it.
learning
Also-
right now. You could be bettering
Yeah.
yourself.
Also, we're full of shit.
Yeah.
That's some framing. There you go.
Read a book. Shit.
Read a book.
So thanks for all of those really encouraging words from
Is
the
this
rest
going
of the
the way
members
you
of the
hoped?
podcast. Yeah, this is about how I thought this is going to go, and this is about what it's like typically
How
throughout
much?
the
We got
rest
like
of the
3
podcast.
minutes in. Was that 3 minutes? No.
Yeah, not quite. So,
All right, shut it down. Let's start it over.
so what is Delta Green? I think that Delta Green, well, like if I was going to explain Delta Green to someone who'd never heard it, never experienced it, I would say that Delta Green is a RPG where you play members of a group that are kind of like a mix between Men in Black and the X-Files. They are agents of this undercover conspiracy that is simultaneously seeking to eliminate or contain unnatural threats from the populace, but also trying to hide them, because even having knowledge of them is dangerous. What do you think about that? Let's go to Dace.
Yeah. So I was actually having to explain Delta Green to somebody the other day who is like a lifelong D&D player, like from the very early days, like talking Gygax days.
Yeah.
And Call of Cthulhu was kind of on his radar, so I used that to relate it to him. Like, it's the same sort of vibe, but the biggest difference I found is that Delta Green, as the organization, it's like when you see a movie and they say that the city that the movie was filmed in is almost as much of a character as the main actors. That's how I see the organization of Delta Green.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Yeah. What about you, Jean? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. The biggest thing that stands out for me, I'm kind of new to tabletop RPGs and done like one D&D campaign and then this. And I think the thing that stands out for me is the focus on, I guess, more of the investigative side of things and uncovering what's happening. But it's a bit of a double-edged sword, because you kind of have to progress and uncover things to go forward with the story and to actually understand what's happening. But if you uncover too much, then it's really bad news as well. So that kind of tension is just fantastic, and I think that's pretty unique in my mind for Delta Green, but again, from a very inexperienced perspective.
Right. I mean, that it is true. It's like, as opposed to just running into the goblin fort and slashing everything to pieces and just going and destroying the Lich's phylactery, or whatever. Like, instead of going in and just fighting the bad thing, it's like even being around the bad thing is dangerous. So you gotta be really careful.
But I mean,
don't go and hitting things randomly. That's something we've learned early on. Don't go hit things.
In season 2, we determined that we're recording this a good bit later on. In season 2, we do learn that randomly hitting unknown objects not always the best call.
Not a great idea.
But man, was it good radio.
Delta Green encompasses like kind of all supernatural. I still do have my fingers crossed that we will find a goblin horde at some point.
You never know.
So great.
That'd be great.
Weird things have happened.
To give you guys swords and shields and just have you fight a goblin horde in Delta Green.
God, how awesome would that be? A crossover, like medieval Delta Green. Okay, we gotta. All right. That's our idea. Copyrighted.
Yep, you can't
Medieval
right
Delta Green. So basically, Fallout, the game.
Yep. So Brad, what do you have to add then about like how would you describe Delta Green to someone who never experienced it before, or maybe like what Dace was saying, who has experience with something else?
From a player standpoint, it seems to be like two elements are always involved in at least what we've played, and that's like a mystery to be solved. And I just forgot what my other one was.
Oh,
nice.
Great.
Nice.
Red hot audio.
Oh no, there's way more role playing than than like D&D. Like it's way less combat oriented. So there's way more role playing involved, and there's always like a mystery is the main focus, not necessarily. Well, I mean, I guess there is an objective, but it's more wrapped into like figuring out what's going on.
Is the role playing just like us doing our flavor of it, or is it just in general the Delta Green demands more of it?
I think the game itself leans more heavily into it, because if you think about it, you could theoretically play through like a D&D or Pathfinder game and just kind of lean into the mechanics of going in, knocking over bad guys, and taking their loot.
And never saying a word.
God, it'd be a boring game, but I guess you could.
Never say a word. Just dice rolls.
But I suppose you could do the same thing in Delta Green, and that doesn't mean that those games are bad. Like, we love those games. But I think that, like, I know in Delta, I think you're right. The focus is on the combat a lot of times in those games, and like all of your spells and all of your feats and your skills. A lot of them are built around supporting violence, just supporting the actual fight.
With those, it's like some of the fun is just like, oh, what is this new power I'm going to get when I level up? There are no level ups, quote unquote, that I'm aware of. And any of the like perceived like level ups always come at some kind of cost. Normally,
that's
sanity.
a good point.
Yeah. Well, I think it's, and when you're not fighting, in Delta Green, combat is dangerous, especially if either the unnatural or guns are involved, because Delta Green is a modern day setting, and like guns or the unnatural can kill people in a single strike, much like in real life. I guess I don't know about the unnatural in real life.
Absolutely.
We'll have to swing back around to that.
It's out there.
But yeah, so like in Delta Green, fighting is dangerous. As anyone who goes forward and listens, you're going to hear in both season 1 and in season 2, there's some combat in there, and especially the one that comes up in season 1, it comes up like, man, like this is really hard, but we, as we're going through it, we actually talk about it, and it's like, no, this is how it should be, because we're not demigods, we're not people who have 3 barbarian rages a day, and we're not individuals who have
speak for yourself.
Spells. Oh, okay, right,
we just have 3 impotent rages a day.
Yeah, but yeah, so I think it really makes a big difference, and I think that's what you're talking about, Brad. That leaning into the RP elements to develop what does a character who doesn't have a tool in their toolbox for every situation, what do you do? And that's where the RP comes in.
In a lot of cases.
In a lot of cases, you just die. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the stakes are just so much higher than like traditional D&D, I think.
Yeah.
Death is around every corner.
Well, I think the expectation, especially in a long-form game like what we're playing. So anyone, again, if you're listening, at this point, we'll tell you that we're playing Impossible Landscapes, which is Delta Green's first full-blown campaign by Arc Dream Publishing. It is massive. At the time of recording, we are more than 20 episodes in, and I doubt that we're not to the halfway point yet. And so this is going to be a long-haul story, and I think the expectation is, especially in a long-form game like this, you're going to lose people because, very similar to like Call of Cthulhu, the things you're encountering, the unnatural that you're encountering is all so dangerous, and you just cannot fight it every day or every week and last. It's just... Yeah, it's just, it's like a soldier going into combat every week. Like, something's going to get you eventually.
If not that, then old age, judging by how our characters are now.
That looks to be
this is true.
That looks like where we're going. And also, if you die in this game, you get kicked from the podcast. I think those were the rules, yeah?
I think that's the rules. Well, and not only do you get kicked from the podcast, but I think if you want to come back, I think the other members from the podcast get to like beat you up all together. So like we all come together and
right,
and just
closest thing to permadeath.
Yeah, so like we get you as close to permadeath in real life as possible, and then you're allowed back on the podcast.
This podcast is blood in, blood out, baby.
Okay, no disclaimer. This is not blood sport. No.
Not yet. That's that might be a Patreon tier eventually. Is the blood sport tier?
See us battle to the death.
The blood sport goblin horde.
Yeah.
If there's a market for that, let us know. I guess.
Yeah, hey, hit us up on Reddit.
And
I guess.
To be clear, we are very desperate. It's only a $20 tier.
Yeah.
We will show you our blood for $20.
Right. Yeah. All right. Well, I think we. Yeah, it took a dark turn.
Always
well, listen,
does.
I think that we kind of covered what we're doing here. And listen, go forward, listen to the podcast. The story is super strong, and we have enjoyed every second of it. Something I mentioned a little later on is that even if we never recorded this, even if we recorded it and no one ever watched it, we're gonna play this campaign because we want to play this campaign, and we're having an incredible time with it. So, and I just hope that anyone listening, that you're along for the ride and that you enjoy it. Well, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to you coming along on our journey with us. Thanks, and we'll see you in the first episode.
Adios.
Bye.